broadcast it so we can get started. So since for a minute and we can have all of this online, that's okay. We can chat.
Okay.
So who's gonna start? Tell us about your quarantine. Mine's the same every day.
Well, I'm really lucky actually that cannabis production is considered a essential service. So it's so funny, in Canada we've gone in the last 18 months from it being illegal to becoming a essential service. So we all think that's kind of funny, but it's great because I can go into the greenhouse, I can work from home. And because we're a big greenhouse, we can socially distance easily. So I think it's going pretty well for us.
That's really great. I was watching some stuff, a few videos that people had posted from Canada too, of how well Canada handled everything and how they're taking care of the citizens, sending groceries to the houses. Yeah. So it's interesting. But from the other side, on the US end, I know a lot of states have also declared it essential business, especially for medicinal purposes, and have allowed curbside delivery and home delivery, which is a huge change in this industry. I mean, just like you said, from illegal to essential, that's a huge leap.
Right.
Yes, it is.
California.
Unfortunately, not all states are abiding by those rules. Some states like New Jersey, for instance, their medical program is set for a certain amount of patients a day. They open up at 9 o'clock in the morning and they're done by 9:30. And in other places, it's basing off of like an ID number. And the cool thing about it is the one pro we can get out of it is states that did not have home delivery have established home delivery like California.
Yeah.
So here in California, we do have delivery, and we have seen a lot of our clients still doing really well because it's an essential service all over California. And so that has been really, really good from medicinal as well as recreational, because you have so many people dealing with anxiety for the first time and really just trying not to go to the alcohol and trying to get something to really help them with the stress of this entire situation. So it's been really good here in California too. Now, unfortunately, a lot of our small business people are not going to get that federal money, but those that are in business can continue to service both patients and recreational clients.
I haven't seen statistics for this, but it looks like the industry is still growing, even despite everything that's happening, because people are stocking up, people are home more often, they don't have to drive, they don't get caught at work. So there's a lot of different reasons that demand is going to be high. But with what you just said, I just saw an article that they're projecting a lot of mental health issues and stress and anxiety post all of this. So I'm pretty sure this industry is just going to continue on growing, because not just the recreational side of it, not just the mental health, but even physical pain and ailments, which I'm sure this stress is going to exacerbate for most people. That's a huge new market too. So Amanda, how's it going for you?
Well, at Kikoko, we're seeing, in line with what you're saying, we're seeing a huge increase in our direct-to-consumer. We relaunched our direct-to-consumer a day after the stay in place. Thank God, the timing was good. And it's gone very well. We've seen about 140% growth over this time last year with our old delivery partner. I have to say, I feel incredibly grateful and lucky that the state for 24 hours, shut down cannabis sales, as you know, in California, and the people spoke, and within 24 hours we were back up and running and delivering, and in dispensaries were open again. Now it's slowed down in dispensaries, but direct consumer delivery is seeing a huge upswing, and curbside pickup. Actually, curbside pickup is the largest in California right now, which is a little surprising to me. I would have expected people to want it brought to them, but I think they're using this as an excuse to get out of the house. And even if you're just driving to the dispensary and picking it up, But yeah, we feel very, very fortunate. Kikoko is doing well, and there's so many people that cannot say the same. I mean, given that the cannabis industry in California was plagued before this with issues, this is actually we had all sorts of issues beforehand. So this actually has given us a little bit of a boost, which is lovely. And I think it is because, as you say, anxiety. And people are sitting at home, they're in pain, and they're anxious and they're stressed, and cannabis helps.
So all of you kind of come from different backgrounds, and I'll let you just tell a little bit about like which area in cannabis you're in, and just introduce yourself a little bit more. And I think I want to hear Melinda's perspective first, a little bit about Canada, because Canada is way ahead of the US in this. It's already federally legal, and I think US is just headed that way. So wherever you are, Melinda, we're probably a year or 6 months behind you. So tell us a little bit about Even, and you know how you started, and kind of, I'm sure you've been involved in this fight and the establishment of the marketplace. How has that been?
So it's definitely been interesting. So the program opened up back in 2013. And so we had our application in, I think it opened in August, and we had our application in October. It took us actually 2.5 years in order to get a license. So it's really, really extreme. You got to be pretty dedicated. And then it's graduated licensing, which means you go from cultivation license, and then you have to get your sales license, and then extraction license, and then extraction sales license, and it kind of goes on and on. So then you also have to apply for import and export permits. So I think for us, what we've done, because we are federally legal, everyone in the financial industry quickly jumped on board because they saw it really as the next tech boom. And so we had all these groups jumping in and all these expansions going on that very quickly we got into an oversupplied market. We were actually really lucky. Before it became oversupplied, we decided to expand. So when we got our license, we were actually one of the largest cannabis facilities in Canada with only 220,000 square feet. And we decided at that time that we were going to expand. So we're actually sitting at 1 million square feet right now, all approved. And so that puts us somewhere in the, say, top 5 largest in the world facilities on one site. But now we're sitting on an oversupply market. So the other thing that we did when we kind of predicted that there was going to be way too much expansion in this market is we applied for our EU GMP certification, which allows us to sell into Europe. So that's the one great thing about being federally legal is we can export into not only the European market, but also Australia, and Israel is another big market for us. So we are one of 6, I believe, that have their EU GMP certification. So it's been quite a ride as we go through all these hoops to get to the next level. But I think it's really, really interesting. And you guys are way more advanced than us as far as product development, because every product that we want to put out that we call, Health Canada calls it additional products. So originally we only had dried flower, and then tincture oil was allowed. And now we're allowed to have all the extras like the edibles and the topicals and those kind of things. But we have to apply for every single one of those to be accepted by Health Canada. So it's a very, very slow process for us. But again, even though Health Canada has been, very dominant on this and controlling this industry, what we have felt is that the European countries are looking at what's happened with how it was handled by Health Canada, and they're looking at that program, but it's on how to establish their own, but also it's well respected. And this is why, especially Germans, German distributors are coming to us for our product. So it's very interesting, very different than the American market for sure.
The export point is really interesting because that's going to open up a whole new area of laws and probably revenue and shipment, everything for the US. But the point about it being legalized federally, I think it's going to slow everything down with the FDA for us in the US. And I don't know, Amanda, Toni, what you guys' experience with this is, or Brad, Casey, you guys know anyone who's done this for CBD? I know I looked it up a while back, and I know that the only patents on anything hemp, cannabis, CBD related were owned by the U.S. government, and there's really nothing else that have gone through. So I'm familiar with the legal side of having to go through the application process, but not so much the FDA stuff. And I think that's going to be a big thing if we move towards federal legalization. Have you thought about that, Amanda, anyone, of how it would affect you guys?
You know, we haven't spent a lot of time on it because under this current administration, it's not likely. And so our decision has been to, before coronavirus, we decided to wait. By the way, just the background on Kikoko, I'm one of the co-founders of Kikoko, which is a California-based wellness products company for women. So we have herbal teas, we have mints, we have honey, and we have tinctures. And so, we're best known for our herbal teas, which is what we launched with. And we try and deal with women's issues: sleep, anxiety, pain, libido, mood. So we very much focused on the wellness element. But as far as to address your federal question, we, to be honest, have not spun too many cycles on it because of the political climate in the United States right now. And before Corona, it was, I hate to say it, it was looking like Trump would get back in. I am a Democrat. The hope now is that that's not the case, and that if a Democrat does get in, that we will have more likelihood. Joe Biden hasn't really come out and supported federal legalization yet, but I actually think COVID is going to have an effect on that federal decision because it is a huge industry. There's huge taxes being left on the table. Not that we need more taxation, but the number of jobs this industry could generate, and very quickly, and also the size of the black market. The black market, as you know, in California is 8.7 billion, and the legal market is 3.1. So that's troubling, and one would imagine that the government, both state and federal, would look to shift the money out of the illegal market and into the legal market. So we're hopeful. I mean, we're in touch with the state government here, trying to convince them to lower taxes, and so once it does go federal, we'll do the same thing. But at this point, we're not spinning too many cycles on that because of the federal climate, to be honest.
Yeah. I want to come back to the women's point that you made, because this panel is a pretty good representation of what this market is like with the split between, well, we're more women here, but you know, in general, that's where we're going. We'll come back to that. So Toni, from the government perspective, I know you work with LA County a lot. Is there any shift in lawmaking or decision making? I mean, the fact that they're pushing out these laws like curbside delivery or declaring the business essential, I'm sure that those were a few hectic days there for you guys.
Well, it's kind of different here in California, and just kind of to expand upon what Amanda's saying, here we're trying to get more municipalities to participate in cannabis. So in California, it's a two-tiered process. You have to get a local license before you can get a state license. And the municipality has to be open for a particular license type. So we see in a lot of smaller cities, and I do a lot of work with smaller cities, that a lot of their constituents do not want retail or delivery there. You know, it's a stigma that you're going to have a certain amount of people or certain kind of people there, but they're open to manufacturing, they're open to cultivation, distribution, and this, that, and the other. So Our big push is really to get more municipalities to open up their doors to cannabis, because Amanda is correct. The black market is a huge market here. And the only way we kind of combat against that is, number one, lowering taxes, as she rightly said. And number two, opening up the marketplace here. We've got to make sure more municipalities come on board. And then you have what was deemed to be the largest market in the world, LA, which has been dormant, really not a ton of activity for the last, since September. They opened up phase 3, round 1, which is all about, you know, having a retail license, but that has been stalled since September. And we're looking to hopefully open up that again, because there was an audit done in the city. So it really is just trying to expand here from a local standpoint. We have a great governor here who is very, very responsive to the cannabis community. So I believe that's going to happen. And even before this whole quarantine, I believe that we were on the way for federal legislation. I still believe that. I think it's going to be done in the next 4 years. And I agree with Amanda. I'm a Democrat, not a Biden fan, just because what he has said about the industry before that, but he's got to get on board. You know, when you're talking about the economy of it all, we need this. It has a ton of jobs for people. And so everybody's got to get on board and get away from the stigma.
Mm-hmm. You're 100% right, honestly. Unfortunately, federally, you know, I would love to happen, you know, overnight. You know, we know that's not going to happen. We have some states that are the most populally dense state. Let's take New Jersey, for instance, that if they were to go recreation tomorrow, they would fail and literally sell out within 30 minutes. I promise you that. And you need to, like you said, you need to build from your nucleus, a core. And you need to stabilize and structure a core and build and grow from that. And unfortunately, states like New Jersey that have all those numbers, and Philadelphia and New York City to the left and right of them, they just won't be able to do that. So, and unfortunately, they had 6 licenses they started with. They just, of course, okayed 6 more licenses, which are bigger, publicly traded company brands, Canadian-based, of course, on that stock exchange. And they're bigger brands that have a lot more clout in the industry in other states and other licenses and things of that nature, hopefully to turn that around. But again, to see federally, you know, I'd love to see it happen in a few years. Maybe even 5, but we all know that's impossible. I'm going to say 20 years, 15 years. And I'm an advocate, 110%. We have a hemp farm. We started with a CBD oil company a few years ago. It was health and really, really great branding. We sold that to an owner that we own percentage of. Then we started cultivating hemp. And we're looking to expand and start from seed to extraction on one location on a 1,200-acre farm in Maryland. But of course, trying to achieve other licenses so we can grow as a whole completely vertically on all sectors of the cannabis umbrella. And that's what we need to do. And it's really tough because, in my opinion, you know, you have a lot of large corporations coming in that might not have all the answers when you have small mom and pop guys like myself that have been doing this for about 15 years, getting in the dirt, you know? And I just, you know, hope for the best. We just got to keep the good fight going and keep that uphill battle going.
I want to go back to something that we said really quick about the legality and the federal government. Bahar had mentioned that the only people that own patents on CBD were the government themselves. And I think that specifically for CBD industry, it's definitely still like the Wild West. And we were talking about Canada and having to get licenses for each product that you're going to make. And here it's kind of just do whatever you want, mix whatever you want, put a label on it. And the government definitely needs to get involved a bit more in what's going on there. On the upside, the legal part is catching up a little bit. You're now able to trademark cannabis and CBD companies, which you weren't able to do before. And that happened within the last 6 months. So that was a huge, huge deal because in a lot of these companies, your intellectual property is really what the value of your company is.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The licensing of genetics is what you're going to see.
Yeah.
And it's all about genetics on all sectors of cannabis, whether it be
Genetics
hemp or marijuana. Genetics is the way to go. And you're going to see a lot of synthetic or genetically modified things coming through, trying to get the holy grail of seeds. And you have a lot of smart scientists. A lot of smart scientists that are backing this in other countries. And, you know, it's going to be tough as a grower. You know, do you sell out and go genetically modified? Do you stay to that certified, organic type style plant? I'm really curious to where this future is going to go in this industry. And again, we need to sort of plant our roots first as a whole and be all on the same page. So, you know, I have my check boxes, you know, ready to be checked off as soon as we all can get together and be on the same page.
So I want to shift gears and talk a little bit about opportunity. How much opportunity is available in the industry right now? I don't come from this industry. I come from legal and IT, and same with Casey. Casey and Brad are married, so Brad is the expert in the industry. Casey by association. And she's found a lot of opportunity in the industry as well in consulting. And when I was at the conference last year, what I noticed was that there are a lot of entrepreneurs, like a lot of cannabis entrepreneurs and founders and consultants and farmers, all of them kind of giving each other advice. Like a lot of the legal presentations were coming from people who've gone through it themselves, not by professionals in that area like lawyers or CPAs or HR people. So that's been a huge shift to attract talent, because it doesn't matter that it's a cannabis business. At the end of the day, it's a business. So where do you guys see everything going with that? Are there particular areas that you see opportunity in, or that you see room for talents to kind of be able to shift gears into this industry?
Well, I'll speak to that. I think there is still opportunity. I think right now we're just, to be honest, I think that this year, at least I can only speak to the California cannabis industry, and ours is different than many other states. We've made some mistakes with our regulations for sure. But I think what we'll see is hopefully a lowering of taxes, which will increase the legal market. We're calling this the year of survival. Would I want to be really honest, would I want to be launching a brand into this world today now? No, absolutely. I really would not. I'm going to be really brutally honest. I wouldn't want to. The dispensaries are sticking with what they know. They're sticking with the brands they know. In fact, they're going deeper into those brands. We feel very lucky because we were early. We launched in 2015. But I wouldn't encourage someone to be coming into this climate right now in California. It's very difficult to get shelf space. It's very difficult to even get time on the books with the buyers. And it is the year of survival. Last year was a very bad year in cannabis. We didn't meet expectations. And sorry, my giant dog just came in. So this is, we're calling it the year of just survive before we thrive again. So do I think this is going to be a fantastic year? We're seeing a bump right now for sure, but when stay in place finishes, whenever that is, we don't know, when people emerge and they emerge into this devastated economy and the reality of what we're going to be living through hits, we cannot rely on the fact that the money, the discretionary income is going to be there. There will be cuts. And we just don't know how deep people are going to have to cut their cannabis budgets. So we're preparing, we're hoping for the best, preparing for the worst. We're battening the hatches, so to speak, for a year that is a flat year revenue-wise.
But there's a lot of, if we're lucky. Sorry, how about ancillary businesses? Because with delivery, it's going to increase to hiring delivery people, kind of delivery apps, technology, any innovation in that sense, upgrades in
insurance.
Production. Insurance was an interesting one. Just upgrading everything in the cultivation process and the manufacturing process to increase efficiency, to increase yields. For me, from an outside perspective, I see a lot of growth in related businesses to cannabis.
Ooh, I'm going to be brutally honest. Amanda, you set the stage here. I find in California, I'm 28 years an attorney. I came from a corporate background. I was .com. So I saw this as an emerging market, just like .com in early 2000. But one thing I was amazed when I got into this industry is how information is just passed willy-nilly without trying to corroborate it. Do you find the same thing, Casey? I couldn't believe anything. People just say this stuff and other people don't investigate and they act like it's gospel, and it isn't gospel. I mean, there is no due diligence. And because I come from a compliance background, I always am, where's the due diligence? Where are you getting this information? And that's kind of how I did my practice, because I entered the marketplace in 2016 and I couldn't believe no one could tell me how to get started. And no one could say, you do this first, you do that first. This is what you need. And I really had to get that all myself by looking at the regulations, talking to people, going to municipalities. You have to kind of figure it out. But it's got to be in this industry, there's opportunity, but opportunity for the right people. I just see so much as kind of the charlatan type of mentality. People who indicate, yeah, I'm in the industry, but they really don't know what this industry is all about. They could not tell you the roadmap of how to get a license. I deal with so many times with clients, oh yeah, I know, you don't need to tell me. And then I'm doing litigation 6 months later when they're getting kicked out of a board because they've gone through $10.5 million in less than 2 years. I mean, it's crazy. They don't understand. They have fiduciary responsibilities. They've got responsibilities to their shareholders. There has to be some education in this industry. If we're going to be a grown-up industry, then we have to act like a grown-up business industry. We have to get educated. It's no, you and me, be free, be good. We're going to do a handshake. I see that all the time, and we've got to button it down. So I believe, yes, Bahar, to answer your question, there are a lot of opportunities, but there's got to be opportunity for the right people, for the people who are serious business people. As Amanda said, we're just trying to stay alive. And if you're trying to stay alive, if you're trying to get funding, then you have to have a business plan, a business model. What's the executive board? I tell my clients, what's your mission statement? I don't want to hear that, Toni. That's not what the cannabis industry is all about. Yeah, it is. You better hear it, because that's how you survive. So I think, we really have got to do a better job of being better business people as consultants, treating our clients and telling that you've got to be here for the long haul. And the long haul is being a business.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a lot of noise in the industry right now. A lot of people see opportunity and they're eager to jump on it and make a quick buck. And those are the people that are actually hurting the industry more than helping it, because they're not allowing these brands or people that are more established, have more knowledge, and more best for actually being successful in the industry to make their strides. There's just so much noise.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think it comes down to a bit of a balance, because what we saw up in Canada was that there was a lot of people saw it as the next tech boom. They jumped in, they saw it as a stock market play. And we see a lot of the companies that really got into it because they saw the possibilities on the stock market. But eventually it comes down to who has a business plan, who's going to be a long-term player, who has the capability of actually producing and following through with their brand. So I totally agree with that, but it's also a balance, because we saw a lot of the financial industry, the mining industry, and a lot of the really big companies here in Canada went through piles of money and they really should have been much further along than where they are. What we're seeing now is they're selling off properties. They're closing down facilities. They haven't been able to complete their expansion. So you're right on point, but it is definitely a balance.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Also, a lot of companies invest a lot of money in their initial development and making sure they're completely vertical and doing everything themselves. And because, like I said before, there's so much noise in the industry, you need to spend a lot of money on marketing to get your name out there. That's the way people are differentiating, because there's so many of the same products that in order for people to say, oh, I recognize that brand, because brand recognition is what's going to get you sales. They're not spending enough on marketing. And that's why a lot of these businesses, the smaller businesses, are failing, because they have their product, they do their branding, and they spend their money on that. And then they forget about the fact that now they have to let not just your state for the CBD industry, but the entire country know who you are and get out there and get your name out there to get sales.
There's a couple other companies out there that sort of did that, but they did it investing into brick and mortar storefronts. And unfortunately, they're one of the biggest players in the game and had to let go multiple different people. And I'm not sure as regards to shutting any of those locations down, but you're going to see a lot of licenses and locations come to the market for sale, unfortunately. And I'm seeing it all over in prime locations like Colorado. Unfortunately, the market, in my opinion, was saturated. And you're going to probably see it in other states as well, unfortunately. They're not going to be able to weather the storm because they didn't have a plan B or C for the button down the hatches. Either they were too young or they expanded too fast. In a lot of states, I'm seeing a lack of funding because they're putting together a bankroll and they really don't have sufficient amount of funds to withstand a couple years, which you should have in the bank for this industry. And it takes, in some states, $30-40 million just to put together a program with property and a license and with nothing. How much you're going to get a loan for $120 million for a $40 million license with property and stuff, which is a lot amount of money. They're not thinking that. They're really not putting it together. Who would have thought, because everyone wanted to jump on the next gold boom.
And a lot of people did. What I heard was that there was a piece of advice that I remember from this conference, and they told people, just because you like to smoke doesn't mean you should be in this industry. Like, find your skill set, and it's a tough business. Like, look how regulated it is. It's not going to be a fun business. It's not that fun, because every step of the way there are regulations and laws. So just go and be a user, and you don't have to be in the business. There's one thing that's super interesting about the cannabis industry for me personally, and it's that the fastest growing market segment is women between the ages of 35 and 75. And I read another statistics that women control $30 trillion in annual spending in the US. And one of the biggest factors in their decision making and buying is understanding the story, knowing the story behind a brand. What do you guys think about that?
Absolutely.
Well, I think I can speak to that, being that's our target market. And so there's both a good side to that and a bad side to that. So we launched really for women like ourselves. That we launched for a friend with cancer back in 2014. We had a friend with cancer, and she was trying to use cannabis and getting too high. And it was really her that said, there's nothing for women, reliably dosed, low dosed, doesn't get you so crazy high you're in the hands and knees. And that is healthy, that isn't fatty and isn't sugary. And so we said, naively, we said, okay, well, we'll do it. And so we have made our brand for women such as ourselves. And we spoke to hundreds of women and dealt with their issues, which is sleep and pain and anxiety. And so the issue is those women don't tend to go to dispensaries. They just don't tend to walk into dispensaries. So our biggest challenge has been how to reach those women. And this is the boom that is coronavirus for us. And I wouldn't call it a boom. The uptick that is caused by coronavirus is that women like that are hearing, so drinking in California is up by 45%. So women are saying, look, I'm not going to sit home and slug wine all day. I need to seek alternatives. And so that age group is even in dispensaries. Even dispensaries are now seeing more delivery orders coming from women. The biggest growth in delivery is women and older women who are starting to go, I'm anxious, I'm sitting home, I don't know what's happening, I don't know where my kids are, or whatever it is in the, how my kids are, they're off at college or they're overseas and stuck somewhere. I need something. And so low dose products are doing very well right now. I'm sure hemp is too. CBD from hemp probably is the same thing for anxiety. So we're finding that our market, which the two biggest areas are seniors and women growing in cannabis. And they love Kikoko products because we are a trustworthy brand. We are what we say we are. We're healthy ingredients. We're all organic. We're sun-grown, organically grown, sun-grown plants out of the Emerald Triangle. So we are top quality. They can rely on us. So we are seeing a big boom. But it still doesn't stop the fact that those women they don't want to be seen going to dispensaries. There's still a huge stigma around going to a dispensary. And plus, up here, they can tend to be in pretty scuzzy areas where people don't want to go. So not all of them, but a lot of them. And where I live, there isn't a single dispensary on the peninsula. Between San Francisco and San Jose, there isn't a single dispensary. So we have to Toni's point, we have giant gaps, geographical gaps. So they rely on delivery. So that's where we're putting our money right now, is on delivery.
Question, in California, with that huge gap with no dispensaries, are you allowed to have a cultivation license in that gap?
No, you can have delivery
at all.
It's okay. Most of them you can have delivery. There are some that even have bans on deliveries, believe it or not. Some zip codes on the peninsula where I live that have bans on deliveries, which should be illegal, because Californians voted to have cannabis legalized. So we don't think, and I'm sure Toni could speak to this better than I, that we don't think that cities should have the right to say no delivery. No to everything.
I agree 100%. You guys were the first state in 1996 to start your medical marijuana program, and the first, obviously, to take it to national. And there was a lot of things and pros and cons to how you did it, but California is the one that actually stepped up and did it. You had to learn, take your licks, trial by error,
right.
But at the same time, it was, you're doing it, and that's a lot more than I can say from the state that I reside in and the state that I'm from, and the state that we have Good Farm Hemp in, which is in Maryland.
Okay. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And Brad, to your point, before the whole virus hit, Governor Newsom was really hearing us in terms of the taxes are too high. We have to be a profitable state. And so he was really working with us, trying to talk to those mayors and different types of municipalities with, what are you doing to help us out in this industry? Everybody's got to do their part. So, I really felt everything was kind of in the uptick. And in delivery here, you can deliver across the state. So, but it is these bands of huge geographical areas that are not being serviced. And that's the problem. And Amanda's exactly right. I work with a group called Women Empowered in Cannabis, and we see the majority of users are women over 50, 55 here. And they don't want to go to dispensaries because, unfortunately, dispensaries have to be more women friendly. If that's going to be your market share and that is who you're appealing to, then I don't know why you make it look dark and scuzzy. I know all, I just know.
It's a valid point.
Yeah,
men are building them, not women.
And right. I live by Pasadena and Eagle Rock, and there is a dispensary down the street, and I travel 14 minutes away to a dispensary in Long Beach.
Wow.
That dispensary speaks to me. It is fabulous. It's called The Circle. They do such a great job. And for especially for women and older women, I find people want to be educated. People don't know about CBD and hemp. They see this shit at Walgreens and think it's got the same stuff that, Brad, I'm sure you're selling, which you know it doesn't.
Yeah.
So we have to educate our community, especially women, about the medicinal properties, what it can do. It helped me with all cramps, everything. That's kind of how I first got into cannabis from a wellness perspective, as Amanda's saying. But it is, we've got to elevate the look. Everybody doesn't want to look like MedMen and look like you're going to an Apple store. I don't think that works. It's got to be, going to your point, Mahar, what is the message? How do you differentiate your product and your dispensary from everybody else? And really going, Casey, to what you're saying, marketing to that group.
Absolutely, marketing.
Yeah, and I was gonna add. So Eve actually is a female-oriented brand as well. So, but I wanted to point. It was very interesting for us in the Canadian market. There's about 300 producers right now, and we are, I think, only one of 2 female-oriented companies left. So right now, I'm the only female CEO of a public Canadian cannabis company, and it really is male dominated. And what we said, we sat down, we said, what's our brand going to look like? And I mean, we're sitting in a room full of women, because it's interesting once you have a female leader that you really end up with total female leadership, where we have. And also our employees, where we have about 70% female employees. And we said, we are probably the best people to identify and recognize what women want from their cannabis, because we are a female-oriented company that is actually led by women. So, and I think that's really important, and that, you know, the discrepancy that we've seen in Canada versus the US is incredible when it comes down to female leadership and actually addressing what women want from their cannabis. So it's very interesting what you're saying.
From what I've read, in Canada, there's less than, I think it was an article about you actually, less than 6% leadership in cannabis, which now it's only you. And in the US, it's a little bit higher. It's in the 20-something%, but women control 80% of buying decision-making power in anything in global wellness. And if they're the biggest group and buying group, they're not really being served by someone with the same perspective as themselves. So I think that points out of why women aren't getting what they want at the higher level, and within the businesses, they're not women catering to women. These products are being made, designed, and sold by a lot of male-led companies for a specific target market, and women usually aren't one of them. So that's really interesting for me in terms of not just the open-mindedness of women, there being a higher percentage of women using and being open to use, but also opportunity in business and entrepreneurship and leadership, because there's going to be a market there, and people or bosses or company owners, they're not the ones who demand what's successful. The market does. Mm-hmm. So this is a market that could be used to build a brand, even during these times.
I think, though, even though the numbers are still low for women in places of power in the cannabis industry, it's a lot higher than other industries, and people are more accepting of women in leadership roles. I come from a law firm background that there were no female partners and only 2 female attorneys at my firm. I then went
Sorry, so in law, just for perspective, in law there's less than 18% female partners in US nationally. So cannabis being a new industry is already above that at 20-something%. You're right, they do have a higher percentage of women.
And I also think that people are more willing to listen to these women in leadership roles. I find that when Brad and I go to meetings together, they're not turning to Brad as that would have happened to me, at my law firm. Yeah, exactly. They're listening to me and they're asking me what I think and asking me for my opinion and taking our advice. So I definitely think that, as an industry, cannabis is doing much better than other industries when it comes to female leadership and empowering women.
So, guys, we have some time and a bunch of questions. I'm going to start reading a few, and if it says to whom, I'll let you guys know. That's not long question from John. Did the crisis somehow affect how you spend money on business now? Maybe do you cut down expenses in some of their business areas, or on the contrary, do you decide to invest in some new direction in this industry? For example, focus on increasing volume of the crop, optimize work with suppliers, develop new sales channels, or maybe something else?
I don't mind jumping in, ladies, if you don't mind. The reason why, because this sort of affects with what we're currently doing. We have a 1,200-acre nursery right in Maryland. In Warwick, Maryland, to be precise. Box tree nursery, we do all kinds of stuff. My business partner, trees from everything. And of course, last year was the first year for us in the state of Maryland to achieve a license. So what we did was, we grew about 35,000 plants. And then coming into this year, we wanted to double that. And unfortunately, the workforce that we receive on seasonal basis every 6 months, we have almost 115 employees coming in from South America every single summer. Unfortunately, not everyone made it this year because of the coronavirus. So that dumbing down our plan for doubling up. And of course, the way the market shifted in regards to biomass prices, seed prices, there's a lot of things that have changed compared to putting together a business plan from last year and comparing it to what you really need to do this year is just stay afloat. If you have to restructure. But again, you need to continue to, put that money to what the ultimate goal is, or finding a niche market, and having a consistent buyer for your product or whatever that niche market is. So yeah, it has been, it's going to affect us, but we got to keep moving forward though. That's the best thing about it. Like it's growing outdoors, and you can't predict the elements. You can't predict the future. You got to roll with the tide, and sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. And we do have about 55 climate controlled indoor hoop houses that we do indoor propagation, seed propagation, clone propagation. So, we thought ahead last season moving into this year. So buying more seed and worrying about other genetics, sort of was off of the table and checked off our list. So we're going to try our best this year again.
How about you, Melinda? Have you had any changes in your spending habits now with everything going on?
Yeah, our biggest issue has been our labor force. So we took very early on, we took the stance that we were going to be very, very careful. And the Canadian government has actually done amazing as far as supporting the workers. So we, if they have a sniffle, they can't come in. Like we put so many safeguards in place to protect our team. We were down at one point to just under 50% of our labor force, which of course really slowed our production plan. And especially as we were actually just ramping up because we got approval of our million square feet just a few months ago. And so that's going to be been our biggest effect right now is our labor force. We are just adjusting, right? So luckily, your European buyers continue to move ahead. That commercial transport hasn't been affected yet. And of course, Health Canada and the German regulators are actually working slower as well. So as far as getting import and export permits is slower. But it really hasn't changed our plan other than we're really focused. I'm very glad that we have the EU GMP certification now that we can focus on the European market because Canada, some of the stores have been closed now because they are regulated provincially. So some stores are open, some are closed. We can still order online, but that still does affect the sales, and it has gone down. So it's, I think for us, it's mostly just that it's slowed down our production.
I just want to do a quick time check because we do have some really good questions that I want everybody to have a chance to answer. Are you guys pressed on time, or can we go over a few minutes? We're good? Okay. There's a question from glove to Amanda and Melinda. What new challenges did you have in connection with coronavirus, and which ones are the hardest?
Well, for Kikoko, we realized that the capital market is going to dry up. All of our investors are saying, cut your burn, cut your burn, cut your burn. And so that's exactly what we did. We took very swift action, which was the hardest part of our 5 years in business. We laid people off. Because what we realized is that we're going to need to have to raise money at the end of this year. We were going to have to at our current burn rate. We realized that the capital markets are just not what they used to be, meaning the money's drying up. People are not investing so much in cannabis. The bloom is off the rose. Cannabis isn't performing as it was supposed to because of all the issues that come with this business. And so we just drastically changed our business plan. We are working towards break even, whereas previously we were working towards a growth model. We're now working towards a break even model as quickly as possible. And so that has really dictated what we're doing. And we had to lay people off, which was just absolutely heartbreaking. We have a skeleton crew in the facility with we don't have anybody going in. If you're non-essential, you work from home. The only people that are going into the facility, those that actually are getting the product out the door. We do our own manufacturing. We do everything ourselves. We have an internal lab. We do all our own manufacturing. So we have to keep going with that. And we've had to put really draconian measures in place. You have to take your temperature when you walk into the building. If it's over 37, you have to leave and go seek medical attention. We haven't had that happen. But the last thing we can do is endanger the staff that actually is showing up to work. So we only have about 6 people working in the facility. Everybody else is working from home, which is fine. That's fine. Thank God for Zoom. But it has, I think the biggest thing we've had to do is change our entire business model away from a growth model to a survival mode and to stretch our cash well into 2021.
So Amanda, as far as working remotely, how is that working for your team? I mean, you guys have your meetings, but you also need access to real-time data to make these business decisions. How do you get access to these data? Do you guys use something? How do you connect?
Well, we internally we use Slack, which is brilliant because you can do these Slack calls. And we try now to actually not mandate, but if you're really feeling shitty that day, we don't make you, but we're really encouraging people to turn on their video so we can connect as much face to face. And as far as data, nothing has been interrupted. Our data is, we have a lot of internal analyses that go on every single day as far as our sales. So none of that has been interrupted. So that's not a problem. And working from home really isn't a problem. I think there are some people going a little bit crazy if you're not used to that and you're an extrovert. But for probably 50% of our team, it's not really an issue.
Okay. And Melinda, how about you? Any new challenges in connection with the coronavirus for your company?
Yeah, I mean, again, the capital markets, I agree, it has really dried up. We had a number of discussions that we were having with different investors, and everyone's basically just shut down because of the coronavirus. And so really, it's okay. It doesn't affect us a whole lot. It will slow us in certain things that we were going to expand on. But right now, it really just does come down to the labor force for us. But of course, we're always very concerned about, we have a lot of controls in place. We operate as a pharmaceutical facility. So right now, PPE, so personal protective equipment is really low. So we wear gloves and masks and hair nets and everything. And of course, we're competing with the hospitals for that. So we've just basically changed our SOPs so that, and actually donated a bunch of our gloves to our local hospital because of course what they're doing is way more important than what we're trying to do. And just basically changing our SOPs so that we have to wear our gloves less. So it's definitely been an interesting ride through this whole thing.
So Have there been any areas in the cannabis industry, this is a question that I'm reading, where dramatic changes have happened? Sorry about my dog. I can read the rest of the question.
There is, like I said earlier, there's a few dispensaries and licenses that are going for sale, and a lot more that will be going up for sale. I know that for a fact in certain cities, Illinois, things like that. You know, they're not doing well. You know, and it's obviously, if it's not open as an essential business, then you know they're unfortunately going to fail. And we're going to find out in the next few months, you know, who survived and who didn't. And you know, I don't know if you want to consider weeding out, you know, the broker jokers or the people that just want to jump into the industry that really might not have what it takes. You know, this is sort of the survival of the fittest game right here, like everyone's saying.
Have there been any, I'll read the rest of the question. It says, for example, maybe some tasks that needed to be done in a completely different way. Maybe it took more time to change the process, caring for plants or something else. I think what this question is really trying to get at is, has there been for the past few years any significant changes in business processes in cannabis, whether due to regulation or any other reason? Like your internal business processes?
I don't think so. I think that it's been slow to develop. I think that's definitely an area that needs work, and maybe an opportunity for, you know, people to get into the market to develop more processes to help the industry along.
I think some of that may be because it's such a fast growing and fast moving industry that most companies don't really accomplish establish a lot of business processes because everything is changing fast. But I think that's a great lesson to be learned during this coronavirus times from the cannabis industry, because you're used to change. You change and adapt, and there could be a regulation that literally pulls the rug from under you and you just keep going. And I think that's a great lesson to pull from this industry for people in other industries that are going to be now affected by huge amounts of change coming through.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I also think that part of the reason that there hasn't been a dramatic change is that a lot of companies kind of come up with their own ways of doing things. Brad and I have visited a lot of grow facilities, and every single grow facility, whoever's in charge, has been like, we came up with this way to water our plants, and we've come up with this way to feed our plants. And it's all kind of just like a hodgepodge of, like, someone had an idea and they had someone who knew how to build things and knew how to cut tubes and figure it out. And then once they realize that it's working, maybe then they'll take that to the market. But for the most part, I mean, like we said earlier too, everyone, you know, shares a lot of information, and a lot of the information is just whatever. But everybody is kind of just used to figuring things out for themselves and doing things the way that they want to do it and the way that works for them. And that's why you haven't seen like a big, huge dramatic change, because there isn't one system or one way to do anything in this industry.
We're not organized. We're not organized at all. And that's the problem. No one's on the same page.
Yeah.
And we have that problem in the hemp industry. Like, if you don't know or get a list of each processor in every state around you, you know, to get something processed, you know, there's no index for that. There's no platform, you know. That's something we've been talking about for the past year. Let's make it accessible and easier and cut out the middlemen. If they want to make money, then bring something to the table. As far as I'm concerned, I'm a cultivator. I want to find an end result for my product to be extracted to a distillate, to an isolate, to a water soluble. Whatever the case may be, it needs to be easier access for farmers, starting with them. And then, of course, from there, it should be a domino effect. But we need to fine tune everything. We need to get organized.
Right.
Yeah, I think the problem is that we are coming from the illegal market, right? And so I came from the greenhouse industry. My family's all in greenhouses as well, and my brother and sister grow peppers. There is a lot of scientific research in properly growing plants that we we haven't developed yet because we're coming out of the illegal market rather than a scientific-based agricultural industry. So yeah, we're a few years behind on this and developing this. So this is exactly why we end up with a hodgepodge of procedures rather than it being scientifically based. So we just have to get to that point.
That's 100% true.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
Ahar, we can't hear you.
I had muted because of my dog. And I lost my train of thought. So I will read the next question and then I will come back with my few questions. From Yusuf, I'm sitting for a New York bar exam now scheduled for September and would like to practice law in the cannabis space. Can anyone offer some perspective as to how new attorneys can begin getting experience in this space, as well as areas that are showing a need for legal practitioner services?
I think that the person sitting for the bar, good luck. That was 100 years ago. I would never sit for another damn bar in my life. I really think you need to have a business background. I would offer and do some internship or volunteer. I volunteer a lot with different kind of minority huddles in Northern California as well as Southern California, but you need a good business background. I mean, what I'm so happy about, I have a litigation and a business background, so I know how, if you don't have the right type of contract and if the contract's not buttoned up, I know what's going to happen in court, you know? And so I would suggest to that person, get the foundation. Don't go into cannabis law. What the hell is that? You know, that's just business and contracts and litigation. Get a good foundation and then do some volunteer work and ease your way into it that way. But you have got to have a solid foundation in contracts, in negotiation, in mediation, all of that kind of stuff.
I would say also good luck.
Yeah, good luck.
Ever take in your entire life.
I remember dealing with those times.
Yep.
And I didn't even take it. I didn't even take the test.
I agree with Toni. Get law firm experience. Get general contract mergers and acquisitions. That would be huge to be able to be an associate for a firm that does that. But you're definitely going to need law firm experience. Just again, like Toni said, jumping into cannabis law. What is that? It's basically general law that has a cannabis spin on it. But definitely mergers and acquisitions would be a great way to get some law firm experience. You're also going to be able to get a job in-house at a cannabis company once you have that law firm experience, because no companies hire attorneys straight out of law school. They all want attorneys that have law firm experience first.
Law firm legal experience, and also that business knowledge is extremely important, because you're working so closely with the entrepreneur and the founder and the finance department or the CFO, and you have to understand the bigger reasons of why these business decisions are being made. And it's not always legal. Sometimes lawyers, excuse my language, are really cock-blocking anything that's going to happen and slowing the process down. You have to understand what is the goal of the business, and what's the business value of performing this, and then what are the legal issues, and if we have to adjust. Like, the strategy of the business is much more important than what you think is important legally, because risk is high in this business, and a lot of entrepreneurs are willing to take really high risks, and your job as an attorney is to lower the risk. So sometimes you can really mess up their business and strategy. So business understanding and entrepreneurial understanding is more important than your legal knowledge, because law you can research. Law you can talk to outside counsel and take attorneys and talk to consultants, but where these two mix together, and it's not just applicable in this business. If you want to do anything with your law degree that's a little bit different, move into entrepreneurship and other strategic advising roles to entrepreneurs and CEOs. I think that's a cool area to be. So I have a question of my own. There's a question here, but I want to ask a question and we'll come back. What's something that you've learned, or a piece of advice that you've heard throughout your career that you wish you knew when you first started your companies in this area?
I can jump into that. It is particularly since there are lawyers on this. I will say, get the best lawyers you can afford from the very beginning. When we first got in, lawyers weren't willing to work in cannabis, most of them. I mean, very, very early on, it was really hard, and we got bad advice. So I would say try to afford the best lawyer you can, even if you have to do a stock share or something on that front if you can. And just do everything right. What Toni was saying, never do anything without a contract. Make sure there's a good lawyer that's reviewed that contract, and take their advice. You can't trust people to do things without a contract. You can trust but verify. And so those are the two things that I think if you're starting out, just start out with the right habits, start out with the right SOPs, just start out right. Because otherwise you will run into problems with your licensing. You will get screwed over by people. You will potentially lose your IP. I mean, there's just so many things that can go wrong if you don't come into this industry with your eyes wide open. There are still some dodgy players in this industry, and you have to be in the industry for a while to be able to have a nose for who's dodgy and who's not. And now we've been in it for 5 years. We don't deal with dodgy people, but in the beginning, we didn't know any better, and there were a lot of even more. So that would be is just really start with a very solid base and spend money sensibly. And with that, I'm afraid I'm going to have to drop off. I have another call in 3 minutes, and I have to prepare for that. So it was just lovely. Thank you for including me.
Pleasure.
Good
luck. Stay healthy. God bless.
Thank you. Same to you.
Thank you.
Thanks for including me. Bye-bye.
I'd like to actually piggyback off of what Amanda was saying as far as making sure you have a great contract base. I think in this industry, because of the amount of people that want to be in it, you have to assume you're going to get screwed over. And I know that sounds so negative. It sounds so negative, and it's sad. And like for someone like me, like I like to see the best in people. I want to hope that, when you tell me you're going to do something, that you're going to do it, because you know what, when I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. But you have to assume you're going to get screwed over here. And it doesn't matter if they are your friend, your family member, or someone you met on the street, Joe Schmo. You have to assume that they're going to screw you over, and you need to protect yourself. And that's really the most important thing in the cannabis and CBD and hemp industries, is that you have to protect yourself, protect your intellectual property. And like Amanda said, and I agree with Toni, you have to have a contract for everything, and make sure it's signed by both people so no one can say, I didn't sign that.
Well, the big thing in this industry, NDAs are definitely an everyday thing, at least a couple times a day, no matter who you're speaking to, unfortunately. Yeah. But also because there's so many smoke and mirrors in this industry, and they're starting to get out of here, but they're still in existence. And when you're trying to do the good thing and cultivate some fresh product and get it into the right people's hands to help whatever is needed, we got to make that more accessible and more streamlined. And we really need to get that chain of command, whether if it's all on my farm or more accessible through a platform for my farm to access those tools for us to be successful together. And this industry, believe it or not, started as a crop, in this country started as a crop in a commune, because it was just one of the other ones, just like corn or tomatoes and potatoes. It was an everyday thing. And it happened to just flourish, in that certain longitude and latitude lines in Northern California. And from that point forward, we're at it today. However, I really hope and wish and pray that we turn recreational as a federal government sooner than later, because then I won't develop any more gray hairs, and it's tough with all that stuff.
Yeah, just to add to that, I guess. Yeah, just to add to that, I guess I would agree with all that there are so many shysters in this industry that we have to be so very careful. But I guess the other thing too is what I saw in the Canadian market, especially with, there's so many huge companies that got great support from the capital markets, that I think what everyone has forgotten is to go back down to the core, and it's really about production. It's not about the capital market. You have to be able to be a producer. You have to be able to, I think that eventually I came down to, you know, it doesn't matter what the really big companies are doing, that it's really about following your intuition on what's the right thing to do. And we saw a lot of crazy spending here in Canada by a lot of the really big companies. And I think, you know, they were just buying things for the sake of buying things, that they had money. But now when it comes,
send them to the States.
Yeah. Well, I think the money's gone now, but yeah. But I think that it really comes down to everyone should have been just focused on production. And we talked about branding and all of those things. And I think you got to go back down to the core for sure.
There was something that I saw a couple of years ago that obviously because it's federally legal in Canada, they're able to offer immigration benefits and import scientists and people from other countries who've actually worked in this industry before. Unfortunately, in the US, because it's federally illegal, there's no immigration benefit. You can't bring anyone for the purposes of working in the cannabis industry because the purpose of the business is federally illegal. So that's cutting a lot of talent here, and that usually contributes a lot to development and innovation. So it's an interesting one for Canada. Hopefully US will get on board soon.
Yes.
So there's one last thing that I kept for the end to talk about. I don't know if everybody's interested in this, but the other thing that that fascinated me about this industry, not just cannabis, just hemp in general, is the environmental benefits of it. It's the fact that you can make any products from it and that it absorbs more CO2 from the atmosphere than forests do. So do you guys have anything to contribute, any knowledge on that? I'm new to it. I've just started researching this area of it, so I want to learn as much as I can. Do you guys know much about this area?
Yeah, it's actually, from statistically speaking, they're saying, I don't know the exact plot or how many acres of hemp, but it is more efficient than cleaning the air than trees do, believe it or not. Also with cleansing the soil that it happens to be grown in for the next season. You know, most farmers, at least when we're plowing the fields, you want to cover crop after you're finished and hoping that you have a cycle through the year of a few or a couple other fruits or vegetables after or before your hemp. And that helps keep your soil enriched without spraying any type of, you know, pesticide or anything like that, which is a totally another, you know, talk on how do we keep, you know, caterpillars from off of our crops when we have 40 acres or 1,500 acres full of cannabis plants, hemp plants. You know, how do we keep them all healthy? You know, and again, it's staged, and we got to take step by step. But the plant itself, and the things it can do, phenomenal.
Brad, what about the honeybees as well?
We you know, we thought about setting up beehives around the hemp fields, because of course pollination as well is a plus, and keeping those bees alive, which, you know, hopefully will never be extinct, but I hear these stories. And, you know, we were thinking about, you know, having infused CBD honey sitting on the farm. However, you know, after doing, you know, some more studying and due diligence, you know, you also have to think about cross-pollination. How far away is the next farm from ours? Are they growing for fiber? You know, are they growing from CBD? If they're growing for fiber and they have male plants over there, and I got a bee that's sitting over in their male plant and then comes a couple miles down the street to my plant and starts sitting and pollinating from my plant, then there's a cross-pollination right there on my female plant. I'm going to have a problem. And if you got 40 acres, or it could be 5 acres, you know, and it could, you know, if you're not walking your fields every single day, pulling out males, checking everything, you know, it's a 7-8 day a week job, 25 hours a day. And it is farming, you know, but the coolest thing about it is seeing the fruits of your labor. Literally, there's nothing cooler than taking a small little seed and growing it into this 4, 5, 6, sometimes 10-foot plant that's a bush or a tree, and you get this amazing flower from it that could literally do and help, and I can't say heal or, you know, let's say prevent many of different things from the human body, all under one full spectrum recipe. And it's just phenomenal how this plant has been around for 3,000 plus years. And unfortunately, our government, our pharmaceutical companies, not to name names, have kept that away from us for medicinal purposes as well. And this is just a scratch at the surface right now. And hopefully we can band together sooner than later to make this the mission to be, you know, accomplished after we all get healthy and stuff like that from Corona-19, the coronavirus. You know, it's sad, but, you know, we still got to keep plugging along here.
I use CBD as part of my Corona immunity program. So, yeah, CBD is part of my everyday.
So I have my last question, literally my favorite question. I ask it in all of the job interviews, and I stole it. I'll give Alex credit for this because I stole this question. But, and I want everybody to answer. If you had an unlimited budget to build an IT solution, like some software, some sort of technology app, what would it be and what problem would it solve?
I'll say it again. It would be to organize the chain of steps, the chain of commands from seed to extraction in the hemp industry right now. You know, unfortunately, you're not going to get a bunch of farmers that've been farming their entire life for multiple generations to slap an ethanol extraction facility on their farm. It's not happening. It's not feasible. You know, farming is their daily routine. They do it 365 days, sometimes 366 days a year. So, you know, it has to be plug it and play, just like corn, just like soybeans. All right. And that's where we have to go. And that's the problem that I deal with. It has to be for that process, IT based, platform based, to where we can connect to the people we need to connect to without going through, you know, Google and trying to search something that Google or Facebook or Instagram doesn't really care about us trying to make money off of.
But to find those shady people, you want a better IT platform to connect everyone to avoid this shadiness.
Yeah.
We want sources. In any other industry, if I'm looking for a lawyer, a particular niche market lawyer, I can find that easily. If I'm going to plug into my Google search, Warwick, Maryland, nearest ethanol hemp processing facility, good luck. Good luck with that.
Melinda, how
not happening. Colorado, maybe, California, not on the East Coast.
Melinda, I'm curious. I know you come from a cultivation background, and I saw in your profile something about being a bud counter. Is there anything in cultivation that you would invest something in?
I'm surprised you came by that. Yeah, when I was in school, I worked for an entomologist, so I definitely know my bugs. I think I would somewhat agree. You know, we talked about the shysters, and you know, right now, I think it would be about easier information, right? So right now we have so many restrictions on what we can say, put on our website about our product. For example, we cannot have a cannabis leaf on our website. Health Canada regulates what we put on our website and how much information that we give out. I wish that we were able to give out more information and make it easier so that people can see what our products are all about. But we can't claim very much, like we can't claim any kind of medicinal effects or properties. We basically can't put anything out as far as branding. You know, if you look at our packaging, it's actually really, really sad, because what they did is they took all the restrictions from the alcohol and cigarette restrictions, and they basically put them all together, and pharmaceutical, and put them all together for cannabis. So, you know, our packaging is really, really sad. Like, you'll see the Eve name on it, but that's about it. And it's full of warnings and the cannabinoid profile and those kind of things. But we really, it'd be nice if we could actually get out more information about our products somehow legally. And also, though, you know, again, being able to access, you know, more information about the people that we're trying to deal with, and, you know, be able to get a copy of their license instantly, and have easy access for information about people that we want to, possible buyers or whatever from Europe. That would be my ideal. That would be great.
That profile idea, Bahar, that you and I were talking about, that sort of narrows my problems and hers.
So it looks like there's a few things going on. You know, we're always building technology, and I've been working on some cannabis stuff, some platforms that we're building for the last 6 months, and that's how I got to know the industry. And there are some tools from other industries that are very well implanted into the cannabis industry that could solve some of these supply chain problems, some analytics problems, and really automation. Because the industry is established enough, especially in Canada and a lot of countries, where it's time to have an actual platform that was built for this industry to solve these everyday problems with more attention to these smaller user experience issues, versus here, let's just get you off of Excel and spend a ton of money to get this something that's just as ugly and not really user friendly. So that's an interesting part, especially because there's so much law and regulations that dictate what the business processes should be, and not every employee within the supply chain inside of the company is aware of all of this. So it's a good checks and balances to have you know, an IT-based manager. There's a question that I missed. I will read it. The question says, isn't the time when UN or WTO or corporations involved in the business of cannabis shall come forward or build pressure globally towards organized business of cannabis as economy all over the world in any way suffering badly in the world anywhere suffering badly in this sector has huge potential to generate revenue. I think just global expansion and revenue for other countries, especially underdeveloped countries. I'm not sure you guys can answer that, but for me, from my little experience, it seems like there are a lot of countries who are jumping on board and moving much faster than the US.
Mm-hmm. And there's
yes, that
are lobbying here in the US for these rights. The problem is that you have so many people that are against it, and it takes a lot, Brad's correct, it takes a lot of money to get bills passed, to get laws passed. And it's just unfortunately a slow process because you have a lot of people from the older generation who still look at it with a bad stigma. And unfortunately, those are the people that are in our government, are in charge of our government right now. You know, we need to get younger people. I know millennials get a really bad rap. I'm a millennial. I think we're awesome. And I think we need to get more millennials into places of power in the government, and it will move much, much faster.
I think that's happening naturally because our age, I saw a meme that was like, people called out older people saying millennials should stay home, and everybody was like, millennials are in their mid to late 30s working and having kids, nobody's partying. But I think millennials are at an age where they're going to start taking over these roles, and that's naturally going to bring their perception into this. And we're coming out of, 30, 40 years of a lot of money spent to change the stigma to this negative thinking about cannabis. And it's going to take time to change that because there's no education. Back to where we started. There's no education. There's no, there's less education, and there's no really scientific research that are well funded to produce studies. And it's all new. There's more history in other countries. I know there's a lot of studies out of Israel. And of course, a lot of experience from Netherlands that's exportable to other countries, but it's going to take time. It's going to take time for this perception shift. But what better time than now, where people are home, and this is where the biggest cultural shifts are going to happen. You can really choose what information you allow into your home, what you absorb, what data you absorb through TV or social media. So people are really going to start making up their own minds. At least they have to. I can't say that for everyone, but I can feel that shift happening in people.
No, you're 100% right. It's all about education, number one. And that's one thing, first and foremost, you need to do when you're selling a branded product is education. And no better time than now to have a platform of education for the cannabis industry when everyone's home staring at their phone or Netflix. You're right. Too bad we didn't, know that before. Prior to that, we'd have a full, class for them to take. As far as, paying people to teach you how to grow a tomato plant, but it's actual weed. And that's essentially what it is. Go in the backyard, grow a tomato plant. If you can keep it alive, and you are allowed to grow in your state, try one. That's a start. But the cannabinoids go forever. And we don't even know how many they are other than about 120 of them plus. And we know maybe 6 to 7 that actually we know scientifically that can help. And we're groundbreaking new things every single day. It's just a matter of when and where is it going to stop? It won't, and it continues to grow. And the thing that's been kept from us is our endocannabinoid system, our nervous system, the doctors, the educational institutions have been keeping it from us. That's where it needs to start, with doctors. They need to teach them a lot more than what they're teaching them now. And I know the statistic prior to when the cannabis industry was getting big was like minimal, maybe 0.4% schools, medical schools were actually teaching anything about the cannabinoid system, the endocannabinoid system. And that's where it starts. You need to educate people the truth about their human body, right? Incorporate it all through school and explain to them what cannabinoids are and what they do to your CB1 and CB2 receptors. And that's where it starts. And until we get to that point, you can't build in the middle. We need to start from the bottom to build up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. Because we don't even have a lot of clinical trials here.
Yep.
Look at just the absence of clinical trials versus what's happening in Israel. So, Brad, you're 100% correct. It's got to start with the basic science of it all. And
agreed.
That validity and bringing that up. Unfortunately, in this country, if the scientists say it, then that makes it so. If the medical community embraces it, that makes it so. So we have to start bringing that up. You're exactly right on that one.
The reason why is because it takes a lot of this. With someone that has so much passion, right, that loves this industry 100%, I can't financially fund everything I need to do to educate everyone. And it starts in the science lab.
Absolutely.
And they're not looking at it as a grower's point of view because it is a science. Mm-hmm. And it always has been a science. That's the problem.
Yep.
And the growers are looked at as farmers or potheads.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
They don't have the credibility that you need to make the industry grow.
Absolutely.
From the other side, in general with the US culture, we're not very great in terms of what we consume as food and what's allowed to be in those foods and medicine. And I think this is a problem not just with consuming cannabis and understanding how it affects your body, but whatever you consume, it affects your body. So it's a self-study to understand what type of foods you're eating and how that affects it, what type of medicine and chemicals are in your medicine versus this naturally grown thing. And even there to have a better understanding, you really have to self-educate and read about it. And there, from my research, it's mostly shared experiences that people are sharing. Like, I tried this strain, this is the effect it had on me, here are the diseases that I have, here's what you can use it for. But legally, stores and who sells it, they're not allowed to make this recommendations. They're not even allowed to say this will help you for sleep, like put it on product for sleep. So there's a lot of this wishy-washy information, but there's this network of, I guess, users who are supporting each other and sharing this information. And maybe in the future that will become a little bit more centralized.
The reason, though, that you can put for sleep on a product that has cannabis or CBD is if it has melatonin, not because of the cannabis or CBD, because melatonin has scientific backing that it helps you sleep. So that's the problem with the industry. It could be this much melatonin that's not doing anything to you, and really the CBD is what is the more potent effect. or the cannabis, but because it says melatonin on it, it makes it a nutraceutical, and you're allowed to say helps with sleep. So the industry, Brad's right, we're starting in the middle. We need to start at the beginning, and then we need science behind it.
Well, that's another problem that you brought up, the fact of a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And you're seeing a lot of brands on big shelves with a little bit of that. And it's not CBD. It's not, it's not a 1,500 milligrams worth of CBD
Or
in a 1 ounce tincture bottle.
It doesn't do anything.
Right.
Quality assurance. That's where we have to, the products have to be quality assurance. We need to grow quality product. That's where it starts. Like it's been said here today a couple times by a couple people, and we just got to stick with it. We got to stick to our roots and continue moving forward. But we have to band together. Like, I don't know everything. We don't all know everything. We can try to be a jack of all trades, but I would call myself the dumbest man in the world if I didn't put other people in positions to be successful, to do my job a little bit better with direction.
The smartest people are the ones who choose the smartest people.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
I also understood that there's a lot of these companies are using their packaging, like in China, and importing. And now with there being huge black markets in a lot of states and even globally, there are a lot of fake products being released. So I'm sure brands are going to end up getting kind of blamed and punished, and people as users can't really trust what they're getting unless you're buying it from like an actual dispensary. Even a lot of delivery places aren't necessarily delivering legal products, and that could affect the quality, and you're putting that in your body, especially if you're consuming that. So you have to be really careful and educate yourself as a user. If you want to go into business, you have to self-educate a lot, and really the best way is these types of connections. I think for people, it's networking with people who have years of experience, who can share some of the tips that you shared that they wouldn't come across in normal ways.
The one thing that we can start with as an educational platform for every human body on this earth in regards to cannabis and purchasing cannabis, you have the right to ask for a third-party lab testing results for that product. And if that brand or that shop or wherever you're purchasing from cannot give you that piece of paper stating the amount of cannabinoids in it, the potency of product, is there metals in it? If not, what it was taking care, like that's quality assurance to us right now in a brand new industry. That separates all the cream from everything else, and it will rise to the top. The problem is lack of knowing that I can ask before I purchase a cannabis product or a nutraceutical, anything at a GNC, anything off the shelf that is not prescribed pills from a pharmacist. You can ask for a third-party lab testing result. You don't have to buy it at all until you get something that shows the proof that shows on that label. You want to say you want to buy 1,500 milligrams of CBG, CBD, whatever cannabinoid, these testing results will show you exactly what's in there. And people need to be known that that is a tool for them to help educate themselves to move forward as they purchase cannabis products.
And I don't know about but in California, everything has to be lab tested and has to be approved before it's put on the shelf. And
you've guys been here for a while.
Yeah, and to Brad's point, if it doesn't meet the standard, then it has to be remediated, disposed of, whatever. But it has to be lab tested before it goes into, because people forget you are putting product in the stream of commerce. And I'm always telling my clients, and this, Casey, people are going to have some product liability lawsuits coming in because you put a shitty product out there that made them sick, that didn't have a desired result, or had something maybe you were allergic to and didn't know. So, again, Brad, you're absolutely correct. Absolutely correct on that.
Unfortunately, California is ahead of the game in many of ways. Other states, in regards to brick and mortars that sell CBD product, don't always abide by all those rules, and people don't know.
Yep, you're right. You're absolutely right. And for CBD, because it's not cannabis, they don't have to go under the Bureau of Cannabis Control rules here in California. They're under hemp agricultural rules. So you're
correct.
Right.
I mean, a lab could give you a result and you could go take that product. That doesn't guarantee that that's what's in it in the CBD industry, unfortunately, because it's so much less regulated. So a lab can give you a COA saying, oh, this is exactly what's in that product. But unless you test it yourself or you trust the company or know that it's a trusted company, you're not guaranteed that that's what's in your product.
Yep. Good point.
But it really does start with the regulations, though. Like we have to test in Canada, we have to test for almost 100 different pesticides, microbials, cannabinoids, heavy metals, and that's a standard. And then also our testing services, they all have to be licensed as well. So I think it really actually starts at the regulatory side rather than there has to be standards set.
Yeah, I agree.
And just this conversation is such a good representation of how much the cannabis industry has evolved and how much innovation there is, where in our parents' generation, they got a flower or something dry that they had no idea what it was and what it did to them. Maybe they laughed, maybe they fell asleep. And now you have facilities with people in, the hazmat suits and fully covered. And it's a pharmaceutical company. I guess if you want to imagine how it looks like inside, it's not somebody's basement with drug dealers counting cash. It's a medical grade facility. So with these images coming out and with these stories coming out, that's going to help educate and shift the perspective on the cannabis industry a lot. Well, this was a really interesting conversation. I know we went over a lot. Thank you for coming. There was one question that I wanted to ask from Amanda that she left. Her website says she has 6 rules of doing business, and the first one is no assholes, and the last one, make an impact. So I was curious to learn the rest. If I hear that from her, I will post it for you guys too.
That's the #1 rule. Don't be an asshole. It's the life rule. The life rule. That's
no assholes make an impact. So
don't be an asshole.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, I'm gonna stay in touch with all of you. I learned a lot. I have some private follow-up questions that I'm not gonna waste other people's time on. I'll follow up with you. Thank you for taking the time and staying. I hope it was interesting to you as well. And we'll do another one soon because I think there's a lot to be said about the educational perspective of it, and those are the types of things that was interesting to me, just to teach people. So I hope you guys will join us again in a few weeks when we do a more in-depth and educational based cannabis one about more specifically for consumers. And this was more specifically for people who want to get in this industry.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much. Pleasure.
I'm going to take a picture of the group.
Yeah.
Yay!
And Bahar, if we can maybe throw maybe an email thread so we can put a face with an email for networking purposes.
Yes.
I just, there's synergy somewhere in this industry, in this room. So it makes sense to throw us in each other's Rolodex.
This was a panel of non-weird people, non-shady people. Connect with each other, find each other on LinkedIn too.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody. Stay safe.
Bye-bye. Same to you. Stay healthy, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.